Hi, I'm Sarah with the Hobby Lobby Creative Studio. Welcome to our Sew This Bedroom series. Today I'm going to show you how to make a pillow with piping just like these. Check out our printable for a supply list of everything you'll need to get started. I'm going to be showing you how to make an 18-inch by 18-inch pillow, but you can just adjust these instructions to make any size pillow you want. Now, since I want to make an 18 by 18-inch pillow, I'll cut two pieces of fabric to 19 by 19 inches each. This includes enough for a half-inch seam allowance on all sides. To figure out how much piping we need, just add up the length of all four sides of the finished pillow size you're wanting. So, 18 inches times 4 equals 72 inches. Plus, we'll add about 6 to 8 inches, so we have a little extra to join our ends. So to be safe, we're just going to start with an even 80 inches of piping. At this point, you need to go ahead and prep your piping for your pillow. To learn how to make your own custom piping, like I have here, check out our Learn to Sew How to Make Bias Tape and Piping video. So, I've already prepped my piping and I'm ready to attach it to the front piece of my pillow. Begin by laying the front piece of your pillow fabric right side up. Starting just off center on the bottom edge, line up the raw edge of your piping with the raw edge of your pillow fabric. Now just start clipping them together. I decided to use clips today because they help hold my piping around my pillow really nice and flat as I sew instead of wavy like pinning tends to do. For about 2 inches on either side of the corner, make a series of small cuts in the raw edge of the piping every half inch or so. This will allow the piping to curve more easily, giving you a nice smooth corner. Continue clipping the piping in place around the rest of your pillow fabric. When you get back to your starting point, lay the end of the piping down next to the beginning and trim the end so it overlaps about 3 inches. We'll match up these ends after a few more steps. Now that everything is clipped into place, you're ready to sew the piping onto the front piece of the pillow. Using your zipper foot, start sewing about 2 inches away from the end of your piping. You'll need this extra 2 inches of wiggle room so you can join your piping together once you get back around to this end. Be sure to stitch on top or just to the right of your piping's existing stitches, not right up snug to the cording. The reason we want to leave a little room right up against the piping is because when we sew on the back piece of the pillow, the stitches from that round will end up hiding the rest of these stitches. Continue sewing around the pillow, removing clips as you go until you get back around and are about 4 inches short of your beginning stitches. Then, go ahead and remove everything from the machine to do the next few steps. Stopping here gives you plenty of piping to work with so you can easily join the ends. Now you're ready to cut the cording so it matches up perfectly end to end. To do this, use a seam ripper to rip out stitches for the first few inches on the right piece of piping, exposing the cording. Find the point where the ends of the cording will match up and cut it so you just have a little extra to ensure there won't be a gap between the ends when you merge them together. Now, on this right piece of piping, open it up like this so the inside of the piping fabric is facing out and you can see the raw cord. You're going to cut the excess fabric at an angle so it visually matches the other seams in the piping. To make sure you're cutting at the correct angle, look back at the angle of the last seam. You're actually going to cut at the opposite angle of this. So since my last seam is angling to the left, I'll cut this one angling to the right. This may seem backwards, but when it's folded under and placed back around the cord, it will actually lay angled to the left like the other seams. Now, it's not necessary, but you may want to go ahead and press this edge under so it has a crisp fold. Just be careful with the iron in such a small area near your fingers. I'm also going to trim off this little extra tip that sticks out after folding it under. So with that edge folded under, lay the left piping into the right side, matching the cording up end to end, and wrap the fabric around the cording and snug into place. Clip this area, and we'll just finish by sewing it together. Since we pulled our pillow off our sewing machine while still stitching, we need to make sure to start and end with a back stitch on top of the stitches we made previously to lock them in place. So, just sew your piping in place and we're on to the next step. Now we're ready to join the front and back pieces of the pillow. For this part, we need to be able to see the stitches we made whenever we sewed our piping on. So just make sure that the piece with the piping sewed onto it is on top whenever you start lining everything up. Place the two pieces with their right sides together with the piped piece on top. Be sure to match up the design on the front and back of your pillow. Clip them in place and you're ready to sew. Sewing on the inside of this line means when you turn your pillow right side out, the previous stitches you've made will be hidden. Go slowly and use your fingers to guide the cord and fabric, keeping the needle inside that stitch line and as close as possible to the cording. Just be sure not to sew into the cord. Continue sewing around the pillow. When you get back to the bottom edge, sew in from the corner about 6 inches, backstitch, and stop there. This will give you an opening in the middle large enough to fit your hand inside, which makes stuffing the pillow a lot easier. Now that all the pieces are connected, take your scissors and cut the fabric at each corner like this. This just helps remove some of the bulk for when you turn it right side out. The next thing I'm going to do is trim around all 4 edges with pinking shears. This isn't required, but it's helpful because it will keep the edges from fraying inside the pillow over time. Now you're ready to flip the whole thing right side out. Be sure to turn out all the corners really well. Our fiber fill comes with a little skewer to help turn our corners out completely, but you could use any blunt-ended object to push against the corners from the inside. Once you have all your corners turned out, refold and repress the 1/2 inch seam at the opening. You want this fold line to be easy to follow when you're ready to close it up with your finishing stitches. Next, start stuffing. Just take a handful of fiber fill, pull on it a bit to fluff it and remove any lumps, then stuff it inside the pillow. Be sure to pack the corners really well as you go. You don't want the corners to lay flat or droopy when it's all done. Keep going until you reach your desired firmness. When your pillow is fully stuffed, you're ready to hand stitch it closed. For this, we'll use a stitch called the ladder stitch, also known as a blind or hidden stitch, because once you're done, you won't be able to see it. So just grab your needle and thread and let's get to it. We're going to start by threading our needle with a decent length of thread. When you thread the needle, pull the thread so that the 2 ends are even and then knot them together. Place several pins at the opening to hold it closed. This will make the stitching much easier. Start by slipping your needle into the fabric where the opening starts, like this. Before pulling the thread all the way through to the knot, guide your needle through the loop just before the knot and pull tight. This works like an extra knot and really secures the end of the thread. Now, put the needle through the opposite fabric directly across from where it comes out. Make a 1/4 inch stitch, going back through the other piece of fabric, and pull the thread through to the other side. Continue this same technique, stitch, move straight across to the other side of fabric, stitch a 1/4 inch, and back across until you get to the end. Once you're at the end, make a knot in your thread and secure it in place with several tiny stitches. Stick the needle in through the seam to hide the thread, then bring it out through the side of your pillow and cut your thread. And now do a happy dance because you just made one seriously professional looking pillow. Just think, you'll never have to buy another throw pillow again because you know how to make them yourself. Well, that's all for today, guys. Be sure and check out our other videos in our Sew This Bedroom series for more room decor DIYs and inspiration. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you here again next time at the Hobby Lobby Creative Studio.